The desert sky was burning red as the twin suns sank behind the jagged rocks. Heat rose from the broken ground, and the air tasted like dust and iron. The human lay half hidden near a pile of stone. His body weak, his breathing heavy. Blood stained his torn shirt, and every breath felt like fire in his chest. He had been left to die, not by strangers, not by enemies, but by his own crew, men he had trusted. Soldiers he had fought beside, had taken their ship and flown away, leaving him broken on this alien world. He remembered their faces as they turned away. The cold eyes that once called him brother. That betrayal cut deeper than any wound on his skin. Around him the alien city came alive, the markets filled with noise, with shouts, with the cries of merchants and slaves. Strange banners moved with the wind, glowing with alien letters he could not read. And from his hiding place he saw them, the gamblers, the masters of this cruel place. They laughed loud as they pushed a young alien girl onto the stage. She was small, her wrists bound by metal cuffs that glowed faint blue. Her skin was pale silver with faint glowing patterns like falling stars. Her hair hung wild over her face, but when the wind lifted it, her eyes showed, a mix of fear and quiet strength. The slavers called her worthless, but the crowd cheered like she was gold. The gamblers wagered her life like one might bet on a coin toss. To them she was nothing, just another piece to win or lose. The human clenched his teeth. Even through pain, even close to death, he felt anger burning inside. He had seen cruelty before, he had seen war. But to see a life wagered like this filled him with a rage hotter than the desert suns. He could not stand, not yet. But his mind was awake, sharper than ever. The gamblers argued and shouted, throwing tokens and credits across the table. One alien with scaled skin slammed his fist, demanding the girl as payment for a lost game. Another laughed, saying she was cursed, saying she was worth nothing. The crowd loved the fight, cheering, waiting to see who would claim her. But the girl did not cry, she did not beg. She only stared at the ground with cold silence. From the shadows, the human's eyes locked on hers. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. She lifted her head, her gaze steady, and for the first time she looked not at her masters but at him. Her lips parted as if to whisper, though no sound came. Something passed between them, fragile but real. It was not hope, not yet, but a spark, like the start of fire in the dark. The human pressed his back against the rock, hiding from the guards. He knew he was weak. He knew he had no weapon, no ally, no way to fight the slavers now. But he also knew this truth: if he lived, if he stood again, he would not leave her behind. Not like his crew left him. The betrayal he carried would not define him. Not anymore. The sky grew darker, stars cutting through the red dusk. The market's noise rose higher, with drums, with shouts, with cruel laughter. The slave girl was dragged down from the stage and chained at the corner, her body trembling though her eyes stayed fierce. The gamblers planned their next round, throwing dice of bone, laughing as if life was nothing. The human's hand touched the stone beside him, his fingers pressing deep as if to ground himself. Pain filled him. Betrayal burned inside him. But something new began to grow too. Resolve. They had left him to die. They thought his story ended here, forgotten in the dirt of an alien world, but they were wrong. Because as long as breath stayed in his chest, he would rise, and the girl, the one wagered away like a broken toy, would not remain a slave. Their fates had crossed in this cruel place, and together they would defy it. The night came fast, shadows covering the market. The guards lit torches, their flames painting the girl's silver skin in gold and red. She closed her eyes, whispering something in her own tongue, a word the human could not understand, but he felt it deep in his chest, as if she called not to the gods but to him. And as he watched her in chains, he swore silently. He would not betray her as he had been betrayed. The desert wind howled through the broken streets. The human's body ached, but his spirit burned. The betrayal had left him broken, but the night had given him a reason to live. For the first time since the ship left him behind, he was not alone, and soon the slavers would learn what it meant to wager with human will. The night in the alien market was alive with firelight. Torches burned in iron bowls, and smoke rose into the star-filled sky. The smell of roasted meat mixed with dust and sweat, and the sound of dice and shouting carried through the air. The slave girl sat in the corner of the market square, her wrists bound with glowing metal cuffs, her ankles chained to a heavy stone. Her body looked weak, but her eyes were not. She had learned long ago that tears did not save anyone. Crying only made the masters laugh. Begging only gave them more power, so she stayed silent, still. Like a shadow no one wanted to see, the gamblers had won her. Or maybe lost her, it did not matter. To them she was no more than a token, a coin, a piece of property. They joked about her silver skin and glowing patterns, saying she was cursed, saying she brought only bad luck. One said she had outlived 3 masters. Another claimed she whispered in the dark to spirits that killed men. But none of them truly looked at her. None of them saw her as alive. Only the human had looked at her. His eyes had found hers in the crowd, and in that second she felt something she had never felt before. It was not pity, it was not fear, it was recognition, as if he saw her as more than chains, more than a wager. She carried that small spark with her now, like a secret flame hidden in her chest. The guards pushed her to the ground when she tried to move. The stone scraped her knees, but she did not cry. Her hair covered her face, but inside she whispered to herself, words from her people's tongue. Not prayers, not anymore, just promises. She promised she would not break. She promised she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her soul die. From his shadowed place the human watched. His body was still weak, his wounds not healed, but his mind never left her. He studied the chains, the cuffs, the guards, the way they treated her. He could see she was different, not just another broken slave. There was a strength in her silence, the same kind of strength he felt inside himself. The gamblers shouted louder, throwing coins and cups. One guard came to her with a jug of water, tipped it over her head and laughed as it washed over her face. The girl coughed but kept her eyes steady. The crowd laughed louder, finding joy in cruelty. The human's fists clenched even though he could not stand yet. The betrayal of his crew already burned in him, and now the chains on her wrists made that fire hotter. The girl's memories haunted her as she sat in the dust. She remembered the night her village was taken, the fire that ate the sky. The soldiers with iron boots had come. They had taken children first because children sold well. They had chained her and dragged her to the city, telling her she belonged to the market now. Since that day, her life had been nothing but wagers, debts and cruel laughter, but tonight, something felt different. Tonight the human had looked at her, and for the first time she believed she might not always wear chains. The stars shifted higher above the market. The dice rolled again. Bets were made. The night stretched on, but the human stayed awake, his eyes never leaving her. Even in weakness, even in pain, he was planning. The girl did not know it yet, but her spark had lit something in him too. When the guards walked away for a moment, she dared to glance back. Her eyes searched the shadows, and there he was, hidden but alive. His body leaned against stone, his hand pressed to his chest, his breath slow but steady. Their eyes met again, no words, no sound. Only a silent bond. In that look she saw his promise. He would not abandon her. Not like the others had abandoned him, and in her heart, she made her own promise. If he tried, if he rose, she would help him even if it cost her life. The chains on her wrists glowed faint blue, heavy and unbreakable, but her spirit was not chained. Her silence was not weakness. Her stillness was not surrender. The gamblers and guards could not see it, but the human saw, and soon they would all see. The desert wind cooled the market, blowing sand across the torches. Some flames flickered and died. Shadows deepened in the corners. The girl closed her eyes and breathed slowly, feeling the weight of the cuffs but also the fire inside. The night was long, but she was not alone anymore, and when dawn came, the chains might still be there, but something would change. She did not know how. She did not know when, but she felt it, because she had seen the human's eyes, and in them, she had found a mirror of her own strength. The dawn came slow, painting the alien market in pale orange light. Dust still hung in the air from the night before, and the smell of smoke lingered. The gamblers had not slept, their cups still filled with bitter drink, their dice still rolling across the wooden table. Around them, slaves moved silently, cleaning the mess, carrying food, serving their masters. The alien girl still sat chained to the stone, her wrists bruised by the glowing cuffs. Her silver skin was marked with dust, but her eyes stayed sharp. She did not cry, she did not beg, she only watched, waiting for something even she could not explain. From the shadows, the human stirred, his body ached, his wounds still raw, but his mind was set. He had been left to die, betrayed by his own crew, but he was alive. And he had decided, if the universe had left him nothing else, it had left him this chance. The girl in chains would not remain in chains if he had any breath left in him. The gamblers laughed as they prepared for another round. One threw a pile of credits on the table. Another placed a weapon as his wager. Then one voice rose above the rest, deep and sharp. "We wager the girl again," the scaled gambler said, slamming his hand on the table. The crowd cheered. For them it was sport. For the girl it was life. The girl lowered her head, her breath steady. She had been wagered many times before, and each time she had survived, but this time felt different. Because she knew someone was watching, someone who did not see her as property. The human pushed himself forward, step by painful step. He moved out of the shadows into the circle of the market, his body shaking but his eyes fierce. The crowd gasped, some laughed, others cursed. They thought he was a ghost or a madman, or some fool who did not know the rules of this place. "I will bargain," the human said, his voice rough but steady. The gamblers turned, staring at him with disbelief. "You?" one sneered. "You are half dead, abandoned by your kind. What do you have to offer?" The human lifted his chin, his eyes burning. "My life," he said. "I place my life against hers." The crowd erupted with laughter. To them it was madness. What value had the life of a dying human? But the gamblers loved madness, they loved danger, and the thought of watching a broken man fight for a slave girl filled them with cruel joy. The scaled gambler leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "You bargain your life? Then you must fight for it," he hissed. "Fight our champion, and if you live, the girl is yours." "And if I lose?" the human asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then your life belongs to us and the girl remains in chains," the gambler grinned. The girl lifted her head slowly, her eyes meeting his. For the first time her lips parted, and a whisper slipped through. "Why?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. The human looked at her and answered with a single word. "Because they left me. But I will not leave you." The guards dragged him forward, shoving him into the center of the square. The crowd gathered around, shouting, laughing, waiting for blood. The girl's heart pounded in her chest, her hands pulling at the chains though she knew they would not break. The human stood tall despite the pain in his body, his fists clenched, his eyes locked on the gambler's champion. The champion stepped into the ring, a massive alien with skin like stone and arms thick as tree trunks. He carried a blade longer than the human's arm, its edge glowing with deadly heat. The crowd roared as he raised it high, confident of victory. The human had no weapon, no armor, only his will. But in his heart, betrayal burned like fire, and in his mind, resolve shone brighter than steel. The bargain was sealed. The human would fight for the slave girl's freedom. The gamblers would watch. The crowd would cheer and the girl would wait. Her chains could bind her body but not her spirit. And for the first time in her life, someone had placed their life on the line for hers. The torches flared as the champion took his first step. The human braced himself, pain shooting through his ribs. The girl whispered to herself, a promise in her own tongue. If he fought for her, she would fight for him. No matter the cost, no matter the chains, no matter the odds, the bargain was dangerous, deadly, foolish in the eyes of all who watched. But it was also the beginning of something greater, a bond between a broken man and a chained girl, a promise forged in blood and betrayal, and the galaxy itself would one day tremble because of this moment. The crowd pressed close around the ring, their shouts echoing under the pale sky. The market had stopped. Every merchant, every gambler, every slave now watched. In the center stood the human, weak but unbroken, his fists clenched, his eyes fixed. Across from him loomed the champion, a giant alien with stone-like skin and a blade glowing with fire. The girl in chains watched with her breath caught in her chest. Her heart pounded like drums. Her wrists burned where the cuffs bit into her flesh. She had seen men fight before, slaves forced to battle for their master's games, but never had she seen one fight not for himself, not for wealth, but for her. The champion roared, lifting his blade high. The crowd cheered, certain the fight would end in a single strike. The human stood still, waiting, his body trembling from pain but his mind sharp. When the blade came down, he rolled aside, the ground shaking where the weapon struck. Dust rose, the crowd gasped. The giant turned with rage. The human used the moment to strike, his fist slamming into the alien's ribs. The blow did little against stone-like skin, but it showed one thing. He would not fall without a fight. The girl's eyes widened, hope flickering inside her like a fragile flame. The champion swung again, the glowing blade cutting through the air. This time it grazed the human's arm, burning his skin, drawing blood. The pain made him stumble, but he did not stop. He grabbed a broken staff lying on the ground. Lifting it as his only weapon, the crowd laughed, mocking him. A stick against a sword. One shouted, "The human is mad." But madness had power, and desperation gave strength. The human swung the staff, blocking the blade. Sparks flying where wood met heat. The champion snarled, pressing forward. His strength endless, the human gave ground, his feet slipping on the dust. But each time he almost fell, he forced himself up again. Each time his body begged him to stop, his rage and will pushed him forward. From her corner, the girl whispered, not words of fear, but words of her people. Old words of courage. Her voice was low. But the human seemed to hear. Each glance at her gave him fire. Each look reminded him why he fought. The gamblers shouted louder, some demanding his death, others betting he might live longer than a minute. Coins and credits flew through the air as the fight grew wild. The slavers loved blood, and the human gave them more than they expected. Every strike of his staff, every dodge, every counter made the crowd roar. But the champion was not finished. With a furious swing, he shattered the staff into splinters, the pieces scattering in the dust. The human stood empty-handed, his breath ragged, his arm bleeding. The crowd screamed for the final blow, their voices echoing like thunder. The champion raised the blade again, certain of victory, but the human smiled, a small, defiant smile, and at that moment the girl acted. She pulled at her chains with all her strength, shifting her cuff just enough to free a small shard of metal. With trembling fingers she threw it toward him, the piece glinting in the torchlight. The human caught it, a jagged edge sharp enough to cut, not a sword. Not a weapon of power, but enough. The crowd gasped as he slashed forward, cutting into the champion's arm. The giant roared in pain, stumbling back, his blade falling from his grip. For the first time, the crowd fell silent. The human stood with blood on his hands, the alien giant clutching his wound. The girl's lips curved into the smallest smile. Hidden but real, she had given him a weapon, and together they had changed the fight. The champion tried to charge again, but the human moved faster. Using the shard in his bare hands, he struck again and again. The alien stumbled, his strength fading, his pride broken, and with one final strike the giant fell to the ground, dust rising around his body. The crowd erupted, half in rage, half in awe. The gamblers cursed, the slavers shouted, the slaves whispered in disbelief. A human left for dead, betrayed and broken, had defeated their champion. The girl's chains rattled as she stood, her eyes locked on him, shining with something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The scaled gambler spat in fury, his face twisted with rage. "This is not over," he shouted. The bargain was a game, not law. But the human pointed the bloodied shard at him, his voice strong. "A bargain is a bargain," he said. "Her freedom is mine, and I will not let you take it back." The market trembled with noise, but within it one truth burned bright. The human had fought with nothing, and still he had won. The girl was no longer just a slave to be wagered. She was part of a promise, and the galaxy itself had just seen the birth of defiance. The market did not stay silent for long. The champion's body still lay in the dust, but already the gamblers were shouting. Some screamed that the fight was unfair. Others demanded the human's head. Guards rushed forward, their weapons drawn, their armor shining under the rising suns. The human stood tall, blood dripping from his wounds, the shard of metal still in his hand. He breathed hard, but his eyes burned with fire. Beside the stone, the girl pulled at her chains, her cuffs glowing faint blue. The promise of freedom hung in the air, but the slavers would not give it willingly. "Kill him," the scaled gambler roared, his voice shaking with fury. The guards moved in, forming a circle around the human. Their spears pointed. The crowd pushed closer, hungry for more blood. The slaves watched with wide eyes, whispers spreading like sparks in dry grass. The girl clenched her fists, her heart pounding. She had risked everything when she threw him the shard. Now as the guards stepped closer, she felt fear and hope twisting together inside her. Would he fall here, or would he rise again? The human's eyes flicked to her only for a second, but in that second he made a choice. He lunged toward her instead of the guards, rolling across the dust. The crowd shouted in surprise as his shard cut into the chain at her ankle. The cuff sparked, the metal cracked, and with a sharp snap it broke. The girl stumbled forward, her leg free for the first time in years. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and for the first time she felt the taste of freedom. The crowd gasped, the guards cursed. The scaled gambler screamed. Together the human and the girl ran, Through the market, past stalls and torches, past slaves who stared with silent hope. The guards chased them, their boots pounding, their voices shouting. But the human knew the city's shadows better than most. He had watched them, studied them while hiding. They ducked into a narrow alley. The walls closed and dark. The girl's chains rattled as she ran. Slowing her steps, the human grabbed her hand, pulling her forward, his own body aching but his will unbroken. Behind them, the guards' torches lit the street, their shadows stretching like monsters on the walls. They reached a dead end, a wall of stone too high to climb. The girl's breath quickened, panic rising in her chest, but the human pressed his hand to the cracks. Searching, at last he found it, a loose grate. "Half buried in the dirt here," he whispered. Pulling it free, they crawled inside. The tunnel damp and narrow, the air heavy with dust. The sound of footsteps thundered above them. Guards shouting, searching, but in the dark tunnels, the human's voice was calm. "Keep low, keep quiet. Don't stop," the girl followed, her chains scraping against stone. Her heart raced, but in the silence she felt something new, trust. She had trusted no one for years, but now she followed him without doubt. Because he had chosen her freedom over his own safety, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Lit only by cracks of light, water dripped from above, and old carvings marked the stone walls. The girl touched them, whispering words from her people's tongue. "This place is older than the city," she said, her voice trembling. The human only nodded. Scanning for another way out, voices echoed behind them. The guards had found the grate, their footsteps drew closer, their torches glowing faint through the cracks. The girl's hands shook as she touched her cuffs, the glow burning against her skin. She turned to him and whispered, "If they catch us, they will kill you, but they will not kill me. They will chain me again." The human looked at her, his jaw tight. "Then we don't let them catch us," he said simply. He picked up a rusted pipe from the floor. Gripping it like a weapon, she stared at him, stunned by the calm in his voice, betrayed, beaten, bleeding, and still he stood like iron. The guards stormed into the chamber. Their torches blazing, the human swung the pipe, striking the first soldier across the face. The girl screamed as sparks flew from her cuffs, the chains rattling as she ducked. The chamber filled with chaos, the sound of metal on stone, shouts, and the crack of breaking wood. The girl found a loose stone on the ground, sharp at the edge for the first time in her life. She lifted it, not to clean, not to carry, but to fight. She struck at the guard nearest her, hitting his knee. The alien cursed, stumbling, and she felt something powerful in her chest. Defiance. Together, side by side, they fought. The human with his pipe, the girl with her stone. The guards fell one by one, not to strength but to will, and when the last torch dropped to the floor, fire spreading across the dry straw, the chamber filled with smoke and flames. "Run!" the human said, pulling her toward another tunnel. She followed, coughing, her chains dragging, but her spirit burning. Behind them, the fire roared, the guards trapped in the blaze. Ahead of them lay darkness, but it was a darkness of choice, not chains. They had escaped the ring, escaped the bargain, escaped the slaver's game. But the hunt was not over, not yet. The city would burn before it let them go, and both of them knew this was only the beginning. The market that once rang with laughter and dice now burned with chaos. Flames spread from stall to stall, leaping from the fallen torches. Merchants screamed as their goods turned to ash. Slaves ran in every direction. The guards shouted orders, but their voices drowned in the roar of fire. In the middle of this storm, the human and the girl slipped through the smoke, their bodies pressed low, their breaths heavy, their hearts beating fast. Every shadow was danger. Every sound could be death, yet together, step by step, they moved like hunted animals, refusing to stop. The girl's cuffs still glowed faint blue, their weight slowing her. Each rattle reminded her she was not free yet. Not fully, but the fire painted her silver skin in gold, making her look like a spirit of flame. To the human's eyes, she was no longer a slave, she was a fighter. The scaled gambler watched from a raised platform, rage twisting his face. "Find them!" he roared, his voice carrying through the smoke. "Bring me the human's head and chain the girl again." His guards obeyed, their boots thundering against stone, their spears shining in the firelight. The human grabbed the girl's hand, pulling her into a side street. The flames chased them, devouring stalls, collapsing beams. Sparks rained down, stinging their skin, filling their lungs with smoke. The girl coughed, her chest tight, but she did not let go of his hand. They reached a barricade of crates and broken carts. The human pushed, straining with all his strength. The crates toppled, opening a narrow path. He guided her through, his eyes darting, always searching for the next way forward. Behind them came the hunters, armored slavers with cruel faces. One spotted them and shouted, pointing with his blade, "There! By the fire!" The human turned, swinging the rusted pipe he still carried. The guard rushed in, but the human struck his helmet. Sparks flying. The man staggered back, and the girl threw her stone. Hitting his leg, the guard fell into the fire. His screams lost in the blaze, the crowd's chaos grew. Merchants fought to save their goods. Slaves tried to break their chains. Some cheered as the human fought, others cursed. But no one could deny it. This night belonged not to the slavers, but to defiance. The girl's voice shook as she whispered, "Why do you fight for me?" "You could have left." The human's jaw tightened. His eyes fierce even in smoke. "Because I was left once," he said. "And I will not do the same to you." Her chest tightened at his words, and for the first time her lips curved into a faint smile. It was not joy, but something deeper, trust. More guards closed in, their shadows stretching long in the firelight. The human pushed the girl behind him, standing like a wall. He swung the pipe again, striking hard. Each movement cost him pain, but each strike carried the weight of betrayal and rage. The girl refused to stay hidden. She picked up another fallen torch, her cuffs rattling as she lifted it. With a cry that startled even herself, she hurled it at the guards. Flames erupted, forcing them back, the fire spreading higher. The crowd gasped as the slave fought beside the human. No longer silent, no longer still. They ran again, deeper into the smoke. The market square behind them was a sea of flame. The scaled gambler shouted in fury, his empire of dice and wagers collapsing before his eyes. But he would not stop. He swore he would see them both chained or dead. The human and the girl ducked into an alley, the heat chasing them. The girl stumbled, her chains dragging. But the human caught her, his arm around her shoulder. He guided her through the maze of fire. Her silver skin glowed in the flicker, her eyes bright with defiance. Above them, the city bells rang, calling more guards. The hunt spread beyond the market, into the streets, into the alleys. The city itself turned against them, but the fire also became their ally. It blinded their hunters, broke their order, and gave them shadows to hide. They reached a water channel beneath a collapsed bridge. The human splashed through, pulling the girl after him. The cold water burned against their hot skin. Washing away the smoke, the girl gasped, her chains heavy in the current. But her grip never left his. Behind them, the market screamed, flames devouring the heart of the city. Above them, the scaled gambler shouted for vengeance, but in the chaos, one truth became clear. A human and a slave girl had defied them all, and the fire had become their shield. The girl looked at the human, her voice low but steady. "We cannot go back," she said. "They will hunt us forever." The human nodded, his face hard, his eyes unbroken. "Then we don't go back," he said. "We make a new path." And as the city burned behind them, the two figures moved deeper into the night. Not master and slave, not gambler and prize, but allies. Bound not by chains, but by a promise stronger than iron. The fire in the market had only just begun, and soon the galaxy would feel its heat. The city burned behind them, its towers glowing red in the night sky. The smoke rose like black storms, and the sound of screams carried on the wind. The human and the girl moved through the dark tunnels beneath the streets. Their breaths were heavy, their bodies tired, but their will unbroken. The girl's chains rattled with every step. They were lighter now, one cuff broken, one ankle free, but they still bound her. Her skin was cut and bruised, her silver patterns dimmed under dirt. Yet in her eyes burned a light stronger than the fire above. The human staggered as he walked. His arm bled where the champion's blade had cut him. His ribs ached with every breath, but he kept moving, pulling her forward, refusing to fall. He had been betrayed, left to die, but now he had a reason to live. The tunnels twisted like veins beneath the city. The sound of boots echoed far behind, the hunters still searching. Torches glowed faint through cracks in the stone. Voices carried in the distance. The scaled gambler would not rest until both were captured or dead. At last they reached the edge of the city. A broken wall stood before them, half covered in moss. Beyond it stretched the desert, endless and dark. The girl's heart sank. Freedom lay there. But so did death. The sands killed the weak. And they were both weak now. The human leaned against the wall. Breathing hard, the girl touched his arm. Her voice soft. "You should rest." He shook his head, his jaw tight. No, not yet. His eyes turned toward her cuffs, glowing faint blue in the shadows. We break these first, he said. You will not run into the desert in chains. He searched the ground, finding a heavy stone, placing her wrists against the wall. He lifted the stone high. The girl closed her eyes, whispering a prayer not to the gods but to courage itself. The stone came down with a sharp crack, sparks flew, pain shot through her arms. But when she opened her eyes, one cuff lay broken at her feet. Her breath shook, tears stung her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. She lifted her freed hand, trembling as she touched her face. It felt strange, unreal, like touching her own spirit for the first time. She looked at the human, her voice breaking. Why do you give so much for me? He answered simply, because once no one gave anything for me. Before she could reply, the sound of boots thundered again. The guards had found them, their torches blazing in the tunnel's mouth. The scaled gambler himself stepped forward, his scaled face twisted with hate. You think you can take what is mine? He hissed. She belongs to me. She is nothing but a wager. The girl's body stiffened, old fear rushing back. But the human stepped in front of her, his stance firm though his body swayed. She belongs to no one, he said, his voice cutting like steel. The gambler raised his blade, his guards spreading out. The final battle had come, and the price of freedom would be paid here. The human fought like fire. Every strike of his pipe, every punch, every kick was born from rage and betrayal. The guards fell, but more came, the tunnel filled with chaos. The girl picked up the broken cuff, sharp as a blade, and struck at the nearest guard. Her chains became her weapon, her defiance her strength. At last, only the scaled gambler remained. He towered over them, his blade glowing red, his eyes burning with fury. The human was on his knees now, his body broken, but still he lifted his shard, his arms steady, his eyes unafraid. The gambler raised his weapon for the killing blow. But the girl stepped forward, her voice fierce. No more, she said. You will not chain me again. With all her strength, she drove the broken cuff into his throat. The gambler choked, his blade clattering to the floor, his body collapsing in the dust. Silence filled the tunnel, broken only by the crackle of distant fire. The girl dropped the cuff. Her hands shaking, she looked at the human, who now leaned against the wall, his breath ragged. He smiled weakly, blood on his lips. You're free, he whispered. Her heart twisted, fear rising. No, not without you. She tore strips from her dress, pressing them to his wounds. Her hands shook, her voice broke, but she refused to let him fall. You saved me, she whispered. Now I save you. In the silence, they leaned against each other, broken but alive. The tunnel opened at last into the desert night. The stars stretched endless above, cold and bright. The girl stepped onto the sand, her chains gone, her spirit unbound. Beside her walked the human, slow but steady, his hand still holding hers. The fire of the market burned behind them. But ahead lay a new dawn, a new life. They had paid the price of freedom in blood, in pain, in defiance, but they were free, and the galaxy, whether it wanted to or not, would remember them.